Welcome to Story Woven, where ancient mysteries come to life. Today, we explore one of the seven wonders of the world, the Great Pyramid of Giza. But there's a twist. This isn't just any pyramid. Oh no, this is the tallest pyramid in the world, standing at an impressive 481 feet, or 146 meters. Built around 2580 BC, its construction took 27 years to complete. That's longer than the entire lifespan of many modern skyscrapers. The ancient Egyptians were quite the engineers, weren't they? But why is it so special? Well, it's not just the height. It's also the oldest of the three pyramids at Giza, and the only one that still stands. The other two have either toppled or been demolished over time. What secrets lie within its chambers? We may never know, but one thing is for sure. The Great Pyramid of Giza will continue to fascinate us for centuries to come. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more. In ancient Egypt, along the banks of the River Nile, a civilization flourished whose achievements still captivate us today. They left behind magnificent buildings, works of art, and most importantly, stories of their gods and beliefs. Among all these treasures, there is one that stands out as the greatest: the Great Pyramid of Giza. In this video, we will explore the mysteries surrounding the Great Pyramid of Giza. We will discuss everything from its history to its construction and the secrets it holds. So make sure to watch till the end. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. The Great Pyramid of Giza is located in the Egyptian desert, near Cairo. For over 3,800 years, it held the title of the world's tallest man-made structure, standing as a testament to the ingenuity and skill of the ancient Egyptians. Built as a tomb for Pharaoh Khufu of the 4th dynasty of the Old Kingdom, the pyramid was constructed over a period of about 26 years, with its estimated completion date being around 2560 BC. Although many believe that it was constructed as a tomb for the pharaoh, historians have yet to find any evidence confirming this theory. Despite this lack of concrete evidence, the Great Pyramid remains an enduring symbol of ancient Egyptian culture and a reminder of the country's rich history. The Great Pyramid is the oldest of the seven wonders of the ancient world and the only one to have survived largely intact. It is the most famous monument of the Giza Pyramid Complex, which is part of the UNESCO World Heritage Site, Memphis, and its necropolis. The site also includes other notable structures, such as the Sphinx, the solar boat, and several smaller pyramids. The Great Pyramid is situated at the northeastern end of the line of the three main pyramids at Giza. It is made up of massive limestone blocks and originally stood at a height of 146.6 meters, or 481 feet. However, over time, most of the smooth white limestone casing has been removed, which has lowered the pyramid's height to its current elevation of 138.5 meters, or 454.4 feet. What we see today is the underlying core structure of the pyramid, which consists of rougher stones. During its construction, the Great Pyramid was covered in white limestone that made it gleam in the sunlight. The base of the pyramid was measured to be about 230.3 meters, or 755.6 feet square, giving it a volume of roughly 2.6 million cubic meters, or 92 million cubic feet. This figure includes an internal hillock, which is a low mound of rock that was placed beneath the floor of the pyramid. In terms of its dimensions, the Great Pyramid had a height of 280 royal cubits, which is equivalent to 146.7 meters, or 481.4 feet. The base length was 440 cubits, or 230.6 meters, or 756.4 feet, and it had a sect of 5 palms. A sect is a slope angle measurement that was commonly used in ancient Egypt. With a sect of 5 palms, the slope of the pyramid's sides would have been approximately 51 degrees. 50 minutes 40 seconds. The construction of the Great Pyramid was a monumental task that required the efforts of thousands of workers over several decades. Estimates suggest that about 2.3 million large blocks were quarried, weighing a total of 6 million tons. These blocks were not uniform in size or shape, and most of them were not cut very precisely. Only the outer layers of the pyramid had flat surfaces that were bound together by mortar. The vast majority of the stones used in the construction of the Great Pyramid came from nearby. Limestone from the Giza Plateau was quarried and transported to the site using ramps and levers. Blocks of granite from Aswan, weighing up to 80 tons, were also used in the construction of the King's Chamber. However, these stones were not uniform in size or shape, and most of them were not cut very precisely. Only the outer layers of the pyramid had flat surfaces that were bound together by mortar. Most of the stones used in the pyramid were hauled from nearby limestone quarries on the Giza Plateau. According to some researchers, the white casing stones were brought from Tura across the Nile River, while others argued that they were quarried locally. The inner granite blocks, which formed the King's Chamber and its substructure, were transported from Aswan, where they were first cut into shape, then hauled up a ramp. In the latest research, it was suggested that the granite was shaped in situ, using wooden chisels and hammers. The construction methods employed during the building of the Great Pyramid remain a subject of ongoing research and debate among experts. The prevailing theory is that the blocks were lifted into place using a ramp system, which would have been a labor-intensive process that required the movement of huge amounts of earth and stone. However, other theories exist, such as the use of internal ramps or water-based systems to transport the blocks. The exact method employed may never be known, but research continues to shed new light on the construction practices of the ancient Egyptians. It is generally believed that Khufu's vizier, Himunu, designed the Great Pyramid. However, his name is only associated with the structure in a later text known as the Turin King List, which dates back to the 13th century BC. There is no direct evidence to support the claim that he was the architect of the Great Pyramid. Nevertheless, many Egyptologists have come to accept the theory based on his status as Khufu's vizier and the absence of other potential candidates. There are 3 known chambers inside the Great Pyramid. The lowest was cut into the bedrock upon which the pyramid was built. Workers probably began excavating this chamber first, but they abandoned the project after creating an empty void with 4 access shafts. The next chamber, known as the Queen's Chamber, was created above ground within the pyramid structure. This chamber has a granite sarcophagus, but no evidence suggests that anyone ever used it as a burial chamber. The final chamber, the King's Chamber, is located above the Queen's Chamber and contains a granite sarcophagus. While it's uncertain whether Khufu's remains are interred here, many Egyptologists believe that it served as his burial chamber. To reach the King's Chamber, one must pass through a narrow corridor called the Grand Gallery, which features a series of steep ascending passages. This challenging route led many to believe that the chamber could only be accessed via a tunnel running through the center of the pyramid. However, modern scanning technology has revealed a previously unknown void that offers an alternate entrance to the chamber. While the purpose of this void remains unclear, it provides valuable insights into the internal structure of the pyramid. Pharaoh Khufu, also known as Cheops, was the second ruler of the 4th dynasty during the Old Kingdom period in ancient Egypt. He ascended to the throne around 2609 BC and is believed to have reigned for 26 years. Khufu's reign marked a significant period in Egyptian history, and his legacy continues to captivate historians and archaeologists alike. During his reign, Khufu oversaw the construction of the Great Pyramid of Giza, which was the largest and tallest building in the world for over 3,800 years. This magnificent structure serves as a testament to the power and wealth of the Egyptian kingdom during the Old Kingdom period. The Great Pyramid of Giza is now the only remaining wonder of the ancient world and remains one of the most iconic symbols of Egypt. Despite his numerous accomplishments, little is known about Khufu's personal life. Historians have been unable to locate a mummy that can be definitively linked to him. Most of what we know about Khufu comes from archaeological evidence and historical records, such as the Turin King List and the pyramid texts. These sources provide insights into his reign and the construction projects he undertook, but they do not reveal much about his personal life or motivations. In recent years, new discoveries have shed light on the reign of Pharaoh Khufu. For example, the discovery of a previously unknown tomb near the Great Pyramid has provided clues about the burial practices of the elite during the Old Kingdom period. Additionally, the analysis of artifacts found in the tomb has revealed new information about the trade networks and cultural influences during Khufu's reign. Overall, Pharaoh Khufu's legacy continues to fascinate scholars and the general public alike. His accomplishments during his reign, such as the construction of the Great Pyramid of Giza, have cemented his place in history as one of the most powerful and influential rulers of ancient Egypt. As new discoveries are made, we can expect to learn even more about his life and legacy in the years to come. In this video, we will look at the discovery of Khufu's diary. We will see what information we get from it about his pyramid and his reign. So let's get into it. The Great Pyramid of Giza was the tomb of Pharaoh Khufu and still contains his granite sarcophagus. It had, like other tombs of Egyptian elites, for main purposes. It housed the body of the deceased and kept it safe. It demonstrated the status of the deceased and his family. It retained the deceased's place in society, and it was a place where offerings could be brought to the deceased. Make your grave well furnished, and prepare thy place in the West. Look, death counts little for us. Look, life is valued highly by us. The house of the dead, the tomb, is for life. Excerpt from the instruction of Harjadef, son of Khufu. In ancient Egypt, high social status was considered absolutely positive, and the monumental social inequalities were symbolized by gigantic pyramids versus smaller mosques. The sizes of tombs were regulated officially, with their allowed dimensions written down in royal decrees. In the Old Kingdom, only kings and queens could have a pyramid tomb. Architectural layout and funeral equipment were also sanctioned, and were like access to material and workers. At the discretion of the king. When the Great Pyramid was built around 2600 BC, inscribing pyramids with text was over 200 years in the future. The pyramid complex of Khufu included 2 temples that were lavishly decorated and inscribed. The Pyramid Temple was dedicated to the said festival, celebrating Khufu's 30th Jubilee. Surviving scenes portray Khufu officials, priests, and other characters performing rituals. The Valley Temple remains largely unexcavated, but blocks reused by Amenhotep I depict, for instance, nautical scenes and personifications of the estates of Khufu. For example, the estate Khufu is beautiful. The mortuary cult of Khufu, which operated in these temples for hundreds of years, indicates that Khufu was successfully interred in the Great Pyramid. That the funeral was carried out by Khufu's son and successor, Jetifer, is evidenced by the presence of his cartouches on the blocks that sealed the boat pits next to the pyramid. The Great Pyramid was likely looted as early as the First Intermediate Period, and may have been reused afterwards. Arab accounts tell stories of mummies and treasures being found inside the pyramid. For instance, Al-Makrizi 1364–1442 reports the discovery of 3 shrouded bodies, a sarcophagus filled with gold, and a corpse in golden armor with a sword of inestimable value and a ruby as large as an egg. Historically, the Great Pyramid had been attributed to Khufu, based on the words of authors of classical antiquity. First and foremost, Herodotus and Diodorus Siculus. During the Middle Ages, other people were credited with the construction of the pyramid as well. For example, Joseph, from the Book of Genesis, Nimrod, or the legendary king, Sorad ibn Saul. In 1837, 4 additional relieving chambers were found above the king's chamber. After tunneling to them, the chambers, previously inaccessible, were covered in hieroglyphs of red paint. The workers who were building the pyramid had marked the blocks with the names of their gangs, which included the pharaoh's name, for example. The gang, the White Crown of Kim Khufu, is powerful. The name of Khufu was spelled out on the walls over a dozen times. Another of these graffiti was found by Goyen on an exterior block of the 4th layer of the pyramid. The inscriptions are comparable to those found at other sites of Khufu, such as the alabaster quarry at Hatneb or the harbor at Wadi al-Jarf, and are present in pyramids of other pharaohs as well. Throughout the 20th century, the cemeteries next to the pyramid were excavated. Family members and high officials of Khufu were buried in the East Field south of the causeway, and the West Field including the wives, children, and grandchildren of Khufu Hemunu Ankaf, and the funerary cache of Het Ophir, a mother of Khufu, as Hassan puts it. From the early dynastic times, it was always the custom for the relatives, friends, and courtiers to be buried in the vicinity of the king they had served during life. This was quite in accordance with the Egyptian idea of the hereafter. The cemeteries were actively expanded until the 6th dynasty and used less frequently afterwards. The earliest pharaonic name of seal impressions is that of Khufu, the latest of Pepe II. Worker graffiti were written on some of the stones of the tombs as well. For instance, Mddw Horus, name of Khufu, on the mastaba of Chafonacht, probably a grandson of Khufu. Some inscriptions in the chapels of the mastabas, like the pyramid, their burial chambers were usually bare of inscriptions, mention Khufu or his pyramid. In 1936, Hassan uncovered a stela of Amenhotep II near the Great Sphinx of Giza, which implies the two larger pyramids were still attributed to Khufu and Kafir in the New Kingdom. It reads, "He yoked the horses in Memphis when he was still young, and stopped at the sanctuary of Horemakhet, the Sphinx. He spent a time there and going round it, looking at the beauty of the sanctuary of Khufu and Khifra the Revered. In 1954, 2 boat pits, one containing the Khufu ship, were discovered buried at the south foot of the pyramid. The cartouche of Jetifer was found on many of the blocks that covered the boat pits. As the successor and eldest son, he would have presumably been responsible for the burial of Khufu. The second boat pit was examined in 1987. Excavation work started in 2010. Graffiti on the stones included 4 instances of the name Khufu, 11 instances of Jetifer, a year in reign, season, month, and day, measurements of the stone, various signs and marks, and a reference line used in construction, all done in red or black ink. During excavations in 2013, the Diary of Miro was found at Wadi al-Jarf. It documents the transportation of white limestone blocks from Tura to the Great Pyramid, which is mentioned by its original name, Akhet Khufu, with a pyramid determinative, dozens of times. It details that the stones were accepted at Chi, Akhet Khufu, the pool of the pyramid, horizon of Khufu, and Roshi Khufu, the entrance to the pool of Khufu, which were under supervision of Ankaf, the half-brother and vizier of Khufu, and the owner of the largest mastaba of the Giza East Field. The Great Pyramid has been determined to be about for 600 years old by 2 principal approaches. Indirectly, through its attribution to Khufu and his chronological age, based on archaeological and textual evidence, and directly via radiocarbon dating of organic material found in the pyramid and included in its mortar. In the past, the Great Pyramid was dated by its attribution to Khufu and his pyramid alone, putting the construction of the Great Pyramid within his reign. Hence, dating the pyramid was a matter of dating Khufu and the 4th dynasty. The relative sequence and synchronicity of events is the focal point of this method. Absolute calendar dates are derived from an interlocked network of evidence, the backbone of which are the lines of succession known from ancient king lists and other texts. The reign lengths from Khufu to known points in the earlier past are summated, bolstered with genealogical data, astronomical observations, and other sources. As such, the historical chronology of Egypt is primarily a political chronology, thus independent from other types of archaeological evidence like stratigraphies, material culture, or radiocarbon dating. The majority of recent chronological estimates date Khufu and his pyramid between 2700 and 2500 BC. What do you think? How does this diary help us understand Khufu and his Great Pyramid? What else do you want to know? Let me know in the comments below. If you liked the video, please hit the thumbs up button and subscribe for more videos like this. Thanks for watching. See you next time. The question of when exactly the Great Pyramid was built has been the subject of debate among Egyptologists and historians since antiquity. Ancient Greek writers attributed its construction to the legendary pharaoh Khufu, and various dates ranging from before 2600 BC to as recent as 1266 BC have been proposed. However, Analysis of the available evidence indicates that it was completed around 2560 BC during the 4th dynasty. Hey, everyone, welcome to our channel, where we bring you new videos every week on all aspects of ancient Egypt. Join us as we explore the origins of the Great Pyramid. The earliest account of the Great Pyramid's construction comes from the ancient Greeks. Herodotus claimed that the structure was built by Khufu, who he erroneously placed after Ramesses III of the 20th dynasty. In contrast, the Egyptian king list attributed the pyramid to Khufu, but placed him in the 4th dynasty, suggesting a date around the middle of the 3rd millennium BC. When excavations revealed the name of Khufu in the relieving chambers of the pyramid in 1837, it became apparent that Herodotus was wrong and that the ancient Egyptians held their tradition that Khufu was the builder. In 1925, Egyptologist J.H. Breasted felt that the completion of the Great Pyramid should be dated to the end of the Old Kingdom. This belief stemmed from his understanding of Egyptian history and geography, along with the lack of suitable dating methods at the time. The presence of antefix tablets in the masonry of Giza's mortuary temple led Brazier to believe that these would provide insight into the structure's construction date. Unfortunately, all of these tablets are damaged and none contain any inscriptions, so they provided no useful information. This issue of missing evidence highlights a common challenge in Egyptology. Some scholars, such as Flinders Petrie, believe that the pyramid was constructed over a longer period, starting in the 26th century BC and finishing with Snefru. However, there was no factual basis for this assumption, and it has not been widely accepted by the wider scientific community. Petrie's assessment that the pyramid was built in 4 stages was based on architectural comparisons with the Bent Pyramid, leading to this conclusion because he felt that the difference in inclination between the two structures could not have been achieved intentionally. His suggestion that the first stage of construction was abandoned after raising about 40 meters, with the remaining 90 meters completed much later, has also been rejected. While Petrie conceded that Khufu could have been the builder, he considered the possibility that a later pharaoh continued his construction, explaining the discrepancy between the historical records and physical evidence. He also admitted that he could not support his theory that the pyramid took 200 years to complete. Egyptologist R.A. Schwartz believed that the Great Pyramid was a dynastic project initiated by Amis and completed by Teti during the 6th dynasty, placing the start of construction in the mid-25th century BC. This belief was primarily based on Schwartz's estimate for the start of the 6th dynasty, which was calculated by adding 136 years to the end of the 5th dynasty. This figure, however, does not take into consideration that the reigns of the 5th dynasty kings were not consecutive, and includes a period of intermediate rule by kings of the 26th dynasty. Therefore, Schwartz's calculation of the start of the 6th dynasty is inaccurate. A turning point came with the advent of radiocarbon dating in the 1950s. By the 1960s, the majority of Egyptologists had come to accept that Khufu was indeed the builder of the pyramid, and that it was constructed around the middle of the 3rd millennium BC, in keeping with the traditional Egyptian chronology. Although the exact date of completion has been the subject of ongoing debate, with estimates varying from 2580 to 2490 BC. The significance of radiocarbon dating in establishing this consensus cannot be overstated. Another method used to determine the age of the pyramid is by examining the wood used in its construction. The inner chambers of the Great Pyramid contain a significant amount of cedar wood, which makes it possible to determine the minimum date for the structure's construction. Analysis of the wood's resin canals shows that the trees were felled in the winter season, suggesting that they could not have been older than 400 years. Additional dating methods have also been employed to refine the estimated date range. For instance, a study published in 2017 utilized luminescence dating of quartz grains extracted from limestone samples collected during the 1950s. The results of the analysis indicated that the outer casing stones of the pyramid were quarried between 2550 and 2470 BC, providing further support for the traditional view of the pyramid's age. However, The age of the wood problem has posed a significant obstacle in understanding the true age of the Great Pyramid. This problem arises because the age of the organic material, such as wood, is determined by counting the annual growth rings and not when it was last used. For example, a piece of wood from a 2,000-year-old tree might only be 100 years old if it was cut down and used for construction. While the old wood problem does not invalidate the radiocarbon dating method, it does affect the interpretation of the results. One potential explanation for the apparent discrepancy between the age of the wood and the traditional chronology of the pyramid-esque construction is that the trees used in its construction grew for an unusually long time. A single cedar tree growing in Lebanon could live for over 1,000 years. It has been suggested that the cedar plank found in the Queen's chamber was from the center of a long-lived tree, which could account for the discrepancy. However, it is also possible that the wood was recycled for many years prior to being deposited in the pyramid. A 2020 analysis of the plank's chemical composition lent credence to the recycling hypothesis, revealing similarities to other known Egyptian cedarwood samples. Additionally, other materials used in the pyramid, such as the mortar, have yielded inconsistent results. Mortar samples taken from different parts of the structure have given different dates, and when recalculated using a calibrated curve, they fall outside of the acceptable range of dates for the pyramid's construction. In the early 20th century, the prevailing view was that the Great Pyramid had been built earlier than indicated by Egyptian chronology, with some scholars placing its construction as early as 4000 BC. This perspective was influenced by the concept of a worldwide deluge and its impact on Egyptian civilization. Egyptologist Flinders Petrie argued that the Egyptian king lists could not be trusted and that the pyramids predated them by several hundred years. The discovery of Khufu's name in the Pyramid-S relieving chamber bolstered the traditional view that Khufu was the builder and supported the accuracy of Egyptian chronology. By the 1960s, radiocarbon dating had established that the pyramid was built around the middle of the 3rd millennium BC, bringing the majority of Egyptologists' estimates within 250 years of each other. Some scholars, however, continued to advocate for earlier dates. In the late 20th century, Egyptologist Wayne Horowitz proposed that the Great Pyramid was constructed during the reign of Sneferu of the 4th dynasty, based on the astronomical alignment of the stars, Thuban and Orion's belt, which he claimed coincided with Sneferu's accession to the throne. This theory was rejected by mainstream Egyptologists, who criticized Horowitz's methodology and interpretations. Egyptologist Zahi Hawass, for example, pointed out that the Orion correlation method is untestable, and that the stars' positions are constantly shifting. Over time, Egyptologists have compiled various pieces of evidence to form a coherent narrative of the pyramid's construction. Among the key supporting points is the fact that the upper pair of air shafts remain sealed, with only the lower pair having been opened since antiquity. These shafts enabled air circulation within the pyramid and are aligned with the cardinal directions. The presence of two uncured tombs within the structure supports the idea that the pyramid was not originally designed as a tomb, and instead evolved from a palace-like complex. During the late 4th dynasty, the practice of burying pharaohs in massive stone structures was already well established, with the pyramids of Amenhotep III and Sahir, for example, serving as precursors. Egyptologists have also noted that the arrangement of the corridors and chambers resembles that of other royal palaces of the era, such as the mortuary temple of Teti and the mastaba of Rahatep and Nofret. Moreover, the internal structure of the pyramid aligns with descriptions found in ancient literature, such as those in Herodotus's work. These literary accounts, while often embellished with fantasy, provide valuable insights into popular beliefs and contemporary interpretations of the pyramid. Several factors contribute to the enigmatic nature of the Great Pyramid. While it stands as a hillock forms the base on which the pyramid stands. It was cut back into steps, and only a strip around the perimeter was leveled, which has been measured to be horizontal and flat to within 21 millimeters (0.8 in). The bedrock reaches a height of almost 6 meters, 20 feet, above the pyramid base at the location of the grotto. Along the sides of the base platform, a series of holes are cut in the bedrock. Linner hypothesizes that they held wooden posts used for alignment. Edwards, among others, suggested the use of water for evening the base, although it is unclear how practical and workable such a system would be. The Great Pyramid consists of an estimated 2.3 million blocks, approximately 5.5 million tons of limestone, 8,000 tons of granite, and 500,000 tons of mortar were used in the construction. Most of the blocks were quarried at Giza, just south of the pyramid, an area now known as the Central Field. They are a particular type of nummulitic limestone formed of the fossils of prehistoric shell creatures, whose small disc form can still be seen in some of the pyramid's blocks upon close inspection. Other fossils have been found in the blocks and other structures on the site, including fossilized shark teeth. The granite stones in the pyramid were transported from Aswan, more than 900 kilometers, 560 miles south. The largest, weighing 25 to 80 tons, formed the ceilings of the king's chamber and the relieving chambers above it. Ancient Egyptians cut stone into rough blocks by hammering grooves into natural stone faces, inserting wooden wedges, then soaking these with water. As the water was absorbed, the wedges expanded, breaking off workable chunks. Once the blocks were cut, they were carried by boat on the Nile to the pyramid and used a now dry offshoot of the river to transport blocks closer to the site. The ancient Greeks believed that slave labor was used, but modern discoveries made it nearby workers' camps associated with construction at Giza suggest that it was built by thousands of conscript laborers. Worker graffiti found at Giza suggest haulers were divided into zao, singular za, groups of 40 men, consisting of 4 subunits that each had an overseer of 10. As to the question of how over 2 million blocks could have been cut within Khufu's lifetime, stonemason Frank Burgos conducted an archaeological experiment based on an abandoned quarry of Khufu discovered in 2017. Within it, an almost completed block and the tools used for cutting it had been uncovered: hardened arsenic, copper chisels, wooden mallets, ropes, and stone tools. In the experiment, replicas of these were used to cut a block weighing about 2.5 tons, the average block size used for the Great Pyramid. It took 4 workers 4 days, with each working 6 hours a day, to excavate it. The initially slow progress speeded up 6 times when the stone was wetted with water. Based on the data, Burgos extrapolates that about 3,500 quarrymen could have produced the 250 blocks per day needed to complete the Great Pyramid in 27 years. A construction management study conducted in 1999, in association with Mark Linner and other Egyptologists, had estimated that the total project required an average workforce of about 13,200 people and a peak workforce of roughly 40,000. The first precise measurements of the pyramid were made by Egyptologist Flinders Petrie in 1882, published as The Pyramids and Temples of Giza. Many of the casing stones and inner chamber blocks of the Great Pyramid fit together with high precision, with joints, on average, only 0.5 millimeters (0.020) in wide. In contrast, core blocks were only roughly shaped, with rubble inserted between larger gaps. Mortar was used to bind the outer layers together and fill gaps in joints. The block height and weight tends to get progressively smaller towards the top. Petrie measured the lowest layer to be 148 centimeters (4.86 feet) high, whereas the layers towards the summit barely exceed 50 centimeters (1.6 feet). The accuracy of the pyramid's perimeter is such that the 4 sides of the base have an average error of only 58 millimeters (2.3 inches) in length B, and the finished base was squared to a mean corner error of only 12 seconds of arc. The completed design dimensions are measured to have originally been 280 royal cubits, 146.7 meters, 481.4 feet high, by 440 cubits, 230.6 meters, 756.4 feet, long at each of the 4 sides of its base. Ancient Egyptians used sect. How much run for 1 cubit of rise? to describe slopes. For the Great Pyramid, a sect of 5 palms was chosen, a ratio of 14:11. In some Egyptologists suggest this slope was chosen because the ratio of perimeter to height, 1,760 to 180 cubits, equals to pi, to an accuracy of better than 0.05%, corresponding to the well-known approximation of pi as 22/7. Werner wrote, "We can conclude that although the ancient Egyptians could not precisely define the value of pi, in practice they used it." Petrie concluded, "But these relations of areas and of circular ratio are so systematic that we should grant that they were in the builder's design." Others have argued that the ancient Egyptians had no concept of pi and would not have thought to encode it in their monuments, and that the observed pyramid slope may be based on the sect choice alone. The sides of the Great Pyramid's base are closely aligned to the 4 geographic, not magnetic cardinal directions, deviating on average 3 minutes and 38 seconds of arc, or about 1/10 of a degree. Several methods have been proposed for how the ancient Egyptians achieved this level of accuracy. The solar gnomon method. The shadow of a vertical rod is tracked throughout a day. The shadow line is intersected by a circle drawn around the base of the rod. Connecting the intersecting points produces an east-west line. An experiment using this method resulted in lines being, on average, 2 minutes 9 seconds off. Due east-west employing a pinhole produced much more accurate results, 19 arc seconds off, whereas using an angled block as a shadow definer was less accurate, 347 off. The pole star method. The polar star is tracked using a movable sight and fixed plumb line. Halfway between the maximum eastern and western elongations is true north. Thuban, the polar star, during the Old Kingdom, was about 2 degrees removed from the celestial pole at the time. The simultaneous transit method. The stars, Mizar and Kokab, appear on a vertical line on the horizon, close to true north around 2500 BC. They slowly and simultaneously shift east over time, which is used to explain the relative misalignment of the pyramids. Many alternative, often contradictory theories have been proposed regarding the pyramid's construction techniques. One mystery of the pyramid's construction is its planning. John Romer suggests that they used the same method that had been used for earlier and later constructions, laying out parts of the plan on the ground at a 1:1 scale. He writes that such a working diagram would also serve to generate the architecture of the pyramid with precision unmatched by any other means. The basalt blocks of the pyramid temple show clear evidence of having been cut with some kind of saw, with an estimated cutting blade of 15 feet, 4.6 meters in length. Romer suggests that this super saw may have had copper teeth and weighed up to 140 kilograms, 310 pounds. He theorizes that such a saw could have been attached to a wooden trestle support and possibly used in conjunction with vegetable oil, cutting sand, emery, or pounded quartz to cut the blocks, which would have required the labor of at least 12 men to operate it. At completion, the Great Pyramid was cased entirely in white limestone. Precisely worked blocks were placed in horizontal layers and carefully fitted together with mortar, their outward faces cut at a slope and smoothed to a high degree. Together they created 4 uniform surfaces, angled at 51-50-40. Palms, unfinished casing blocks of the pyramids of Menkaure and Hennesen at Giza, suggest that the front faces were smoothed only after the stones were laid, with chiseled seams marking correct positioning and where the superfluous rock would have to be trimmed off. The size of a casing stone from the first layer bottom, compared with one of the upper layers top. The height of the horizontal layers is not uniform but varies considerably. So-called backing stones supported the casing, which were, unlike core blocks, precisely dressed as well and bound to the casing with mortar. Now, these stones give the structure its visible appearance. Following the partial dismantling of the pyramid in the Middle Ages, amidst earthquakes in northern Egypt, workers stripped away many of the outer casing stones, which were said to have been carted away by Bari Sultan and Nasar ad-Din al-Hazen in 1356 for use in nearby Cairo. Later, explorers reported massive piles of rubble at the base of the pyramids left over from the continuing collapse of the casing stones, which were subsequently cleared away during continuing excavations of the site. Today, a few of the casing stones from the lowest course can be seen in situ on each side, with the best preserved on the north below the entrances. Excavated by Vyse in 1837, the mortar was chemically analyzed and contains organic inclusions, mostly charcoal, samples of which were radiocarbon dated 228-712-604 BC. 137. It has been theorized that the mortar enabled the masons to set the stones exactly by providing a level bed. Although it has been suggested that some or all of the casing stones were made from a type of concrete that was cast in place, rather than quarried and moved, archaeological evidence and petrographic analysis indicate this was not the case. Petrie noted in 1880 the four sides of the pyramid to be very distinctly hollowed and that each side has a sort of groove, especially down the middle of the face, which he reasoned was a result of increased casing thickness in these areas. Under certain lighting conditions, and with image enhancement, the faces can appear to be split, leading to speculation that the pyramid had been intentionally constructed eight-sided. Laser scanning and photogrammetrical surveys concluded the concavities of the four sides to be the result of the removal of the casing stones, which damaged the underlying blocks that form the outer surface today. The pyramid was once topped by a capstone known as a pyramidion. The material from which it was made is subject to much speculation. Limestone, granite, or basalt are commonly proposed, while in popular culture it is often solid gold, gilded, or electrum. All known 4th dynasty pyramidia of the Red Pyramid, Satellite Pyramid of Khufu G1D, and Queen S Pyramid of Menkaure G3A are of white limestone and were not gilded. Only from the 5th dynasty onward is there evidence of gilded capstones. For instance, a scene on the causeway of Sahir speaks of the white gold pyramidion of the pyramid. Sahir Soul shines. The Great Pyramid's pyramidion was already lost in classical antiquity, as Pliny the Elder and later authors report a platform on its summit. In 1874, a mast was installed on the top by the Scottish astronomer David Gill, who, while returning from observing a rare Venus transit, was invited to survey Egypt and began by surveying the Great Pyramid. His measurements of the pyramid were accurate to within 1 millimeter. The mast was damaged in 2019 by a man who evaded security and climbed the pyramid. However, as the mast was periodically changed due to erosion and so was considered a modern object, the trespasser did not violate Egypt's strict laws regarding antiquities. The internal structure consists of 3 main chambers: the king's, queen's, and subterranean chambers, the grand gallery, and various corridors and shafts. None of the interior walls were decorated or inscribed, as was the norm for tombs of the 4th dynasty. Apart from the marks and names of work gangs left on blocks of the relieving chambers, there are 2 entrances into the pyramid: the original and a forced passage, which meet at a junction. From there, one passage descends into the subterranean chamber, while the other ascends to the grand gallery. From the beginning of the gallery, 3 paths can be taken: a vertical shaft that leads down past a grotto. To meet the descending passage, a horizontal corridor leading to the Queen's chamber, and the path up the gallery itself to the King's chamber that contains the sarcophagus. Both the King's and Queen's chamber have a pair of small air shafts. Above the King's chamber are a series of 5 relieving chambers. The original entrance is on the north side, 15 royal cubits, 7.9 meters. 25.8 feet east of the central line of the pyramid. Before the removal of the casing in the Middle Ages, the pyramid was entered through a hole in the 19th layer of masonry, approximately 17 meters, 56 feet above the pyramid's base level. The height of that layer, 96 centimeters, 3.15 feet, corresponds to the size of the entrance tunnel. That is commonly called the descending passage. 151. According to Strabo, 6424 BC, a movable stone could be raised to enter this sloping corridor. However, it is not known if it was a later addition or original. The original entrance type: left, robber's tunnel; middle, right. A row of double chevrons diverts weight away from the entrance. Several of these chevron blocks are now missing, as indicated by the slanted faces on which they once rested. Numerous, mostly modern, graffiti is cut into the stones around the entrance. Most notable is a large, square text of hieroglyphs carved in honor of Frederick William IV by Carl Richard Lepsius's Prussian expedition to Egypt in 1842 North Face Corridor. In 2016, the Scam Pyramids team detected a cavity behind the entrance chevrons using muography, which was confirmed in 2019 to be a corridor at least 5 meters, 16 feet long, and running horizontal or sloping upwards, thus not parallel to the descending passage. In February 2023, the North Face Corridor was explored with an endoscopic camera, revealing a horizontal tunnel with a length of 9 meters, 30 feet, and a transverse section of about 2 by 2 meters, 6.6 by 6.6 feet. Its ceiling is formed by large chevrons, like those visible above the original entrance, and also similar to relieving chambers. Hi guys, today we're going to take a journey to the bottom of the largest and oldest pyramid still standing on Earth. So without further ado, let us begin. Tourists today enter the Great Pyramid of Giza via the Robbers Tunnel, which was long ago cut straight through the masonry of the pyramid. The entrance was forced into the 6th and 7th layer of the casing, about 7 meters or 23 feet above the base. After running more or less straight and horizontal for 27 meters or 89 feet, it turned sharply left to encounter the blocking stones in the ascending passage. It is possible to enter the descending passage from this point, but access is usually forbidden. The origin of this Robbers Tunnel is the subject of much scholarly discussion. According to tradition, the opening was made around 820 AD by Caliph Al-Amin-'s workmen with a battering ram. The digging dislodged a stone in the ceiling of the descending passage that hid the entrance to the ascending passage, and the noise of that stone falling, then sliding down the descending passage, alerted them to the need to turn left. Unable to remove these stones, the workmen tunneled upwards beside them through the softer limestone of the pyramid, until they reached the ascending passage. Due to historical and archaeological discrepancies, many scholars, with perhaps being the first, contend that this story is apocryphal. They argued that the tunnel had been carved shortly after the pyramid was initially sealed, and this tunnel was then resealed, likely during the Ramesside restoration, and it was this plug that Al-Amin's 9th century expedition cleared away. This theory is furthered by the report of Patriarch Dionysius, the first Telmaharoyo, who claimed that before Al-Amin's expedition, there already existed a breach in the pyramid's north face that extended into the structure 33 meters, or 108 feet, before hitting a dead end. This suggests that some sort of Robbers Tunnel predated Al-Amin, and that the Caliph enlarged it and cleared it of debris from the original entrance. A passage descends through the masonry of the pyramid and then into the bedrock beneath it, ultimately leading to the subterranean chamber. It has a slanted height of 4 Egyptian feet, 1.20 meters or 3.9 feet, and a width of 2 cubits, 1.0 meters or 3.4 feet. Its angle of 26-46 corresponds to a ratio of 1:2. Rise over run. After 28 meters or 92 feet, the lower end of the ascending passage is reached. A square hole in the ceiling, which is blocked by granite stones and might have originally been concealed. To circumvent these hard stones, a short tunnel was excavated that meets the end of the Robbers Tunnel. This was expanded over time and fitted with stairs. The passage continues to descend for another 72 meters or 236 feet. Now through bedrock, instead of the pyramid superstructure. Lazy guides used to block off this part with rubble to avoid having to lead people down and back up the long shaft. Until around 1902, when Covington installed a padlocked iron grill door to stop this practice. Near the end of this section, on the west wall, is the connection to the vertical shaft that leads up to the Grand Gallery. A horizontal shaft connects the end of the descending passage to the subterranean chamber. It has a length of 8.84 meters or 29.0 feet width of 85 centimeters or 2.79 feet, and height of 91 to 95 centimeters or 2.99 to 3.12 feet. A recess is located towards the end of the western wall, slightly larger than the tunnel, the ceiling of which is irregular and undressed. The subterranean chamber, or pit, is the lowest of the three main chambers and the only one dug into the bedrock beneath the pyramid. The grand gallery continues the slope of the ascending passage towards the king's chamber, extending from the 23rd to the 48th course of stones, a rise of 21 meters, 69 feet. It has been praised as a truly spectacular example of stone masonry. 184. It is 8.6 meters, 28 feet, high and 46.68 meters, 153.1 feet, long. Its walls are made out of polished limestone. 185. The base is 4 cubits, 2.1 meters, 6.9 feet wide, but after 2 courses at a height of 2.29 meters, 7.5 feet. The blocks of stone in the walls are corbelled inwards by 6 to 10 centimeters, 2.4 to 3.9 in, on each side. There are 7 of these steps, so, at the top, the grand gallery is only 2 cubits, 1.0 meters, 3.4 feet wide. It is roofed by slabs of stone, laid at a slightly steeper angle than the floor, so that each stone fits into a slot cut into the top of the gallery, like the teeth of a ratchet. The purpose was to have each block supported by the wall of the gallery, rather than resting on the block beneath it, in order to prevent cumulative pressure. At the upper end of the gallery, on the eastern wall, is a hole near the roof that opens into a short tunnel by which access can be gained to the lowest of the relieving chambers. The floor of the grand gallery has a shelf or step on either side, 1 cubit 52.4 centimeters, 20.6 in wide, leaving a lower ramp 2 cubits 1.0 meters, 3.4 feet wide between them. There are 56 slots on the shelves, with 28 on each side. On each wall, 25 niches have been cut above the slots. 187. The purpose of these slots is not known, but the central gutter in the floor of the gallery, which is the same width as the ascending passage, has led to speculation that the blocking stones were stored in the grand gallery and the slots held wooden beams to restrain them from sliding down the passage. 188. Jean-Pierre Houdin theorized that they held a timber frame that was used in combination with a trolley to pull the heavy granite blocks up the pyramid. At the top of the gallery, there is a step onto a small horizontal platform where a tunnel leads through the antechamber, once blocked by portcullis stones, into the king's chamber. The king's chamber is the upmost of the 3 main chambers of the pyramid. The walls consist of 5 courses of blocks that are uninscribed, as was the norm for burial chambers of the 4th dynasty. The stones are precisely fitted together. The facing surfaces are dressed to varying degrees, with some displaying remains of lifting bosses not entirely cut away. 198. The back sides of the blocks were only roughly hewn to shape, as was usual with Egyptian hardstone facade blocks, presumably to save work. Above the roof of the king's chamber are 5 compartments, named from lowest upwards: Davison's chamber, Wellington's chamber, Nelson's chamber, Lady Arbuthnot's chamber, and Campbell's chamber. They were presumably intended to safeguard the king's chamber from the possibility of the roof collapsing under the weight of stone above. Hence they are referred to as relieving chambers. The granite blocks that divide the chambers have flat bottom sides but roughly shaped top sides, giving all 5 chambers an irregular floor but a flat ceiling, with the exception of the uppermost chamber, which has a pointed limestone roof. Nathaniel Davison is credited with the discovery of the lowest of these chambers in 1763, although a French merchant named Maynard informed him of its existence. It can be reached through an ancient passage that originates from the top of the south wall of the Grand Gallery. Upper 4 chambers were discovered in 1837 by Howard Weiss. After discovering a crack in the ceiling of the first chamber, this allowed the insertion of a long reed, which, with the employment of gunpowder and boring rods, opened a tunnel upwards through the masonry. 208. As no access shafts existed for the upper 4 chambers, unlike Davison's chamber, they were completely inaccessible until this point. Numerous graffiti of red ochre paints were found covering the limestone walls of all 4 newly discovered chambers. Apart from leveling lines and indication marks for masons, multiple hieroglyphic inscriptions spell out the names of work gangs. Those names, which were also found in other Egyptian pyramids, like that of Menkaure and Sahir, usually included the name of the pharaoh for whom they were working. The blocks must have received the inscriptions before the chambers became inaccessible during construction. Their orientation, often sideways or upside down, and their sometimes being partially covered by blocks, seems to indicate that the stones were inscribed before being laid. The inscriptions, correctly deciphered only decades after discovery, read as follows. The gang, the Horus, MEDEDUW, is, the purifier, of, the lands, found once in relieving chamber 3. Mededu, being Khufu's Horus name. The gang, the Horus Mededuist, pure found 7 times in chamber 4. The gang, Khufuwik Siteslav, found once in chamber 5, top chamber. The gang, the White Crown of Kamunkafuus, powerful, found once in chambers 2 and 3, 10 times in chamber 4, and twice in chamber 5. Kamunkafu being Khufu's full birth name. The Pyramid Temple, which stood on the east side of the pyramid, and measured 52.2 meters, 171 feet, north to south, and 40 meters, 130 feet, east to west, has almost entirely disappeared. Only some of the black basalt paving remains. There are only a few remnants of the causeway that link the pyramid with the valley and the Valley Temple. The Valley Temple is buried beneath the village of Nazlet El Saman. Basalt paving and limestone walls have been found, but the site has not been excavated.